This is the Wheel of Time podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about the Wheel of Time, episode 5, Blood Calls Blood.
I can't channel. You said yourself you're sworn to the light. And a man of the light cannot kill a girl who's done nothing wrong.
And what makes you think that I'm a man who stays true to his oaths? That I won't just bleed you out right here and now?
If you're going to do it, then do it. But know this. I'll come back in my next life and split you from head to tail like the pig you are!
You would have made a strong Aes Sedai. A wonderful ring to add to my collection.
Welcome back, fellow wheelies. It is I, Chris, and you are listening to the Wheel of Time podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We are talking about episode 5 of season 1, Blood Calls Blood. I am joined by my illustrious co-hosts, the indomitable Derek.
Welcome back, fellow wheelies. I'm not going to be talking very much tonight.
You do have a lot.
Yay!
Yay! It's a Chris and John podcast again. Woo!
We're back.
the dynamic crazy duo. Derek is here. He just has a smelly cat Phoebe Buffet voice.
I have a very sore throat, unfortunately, at the moment. So it's very deep.
It's deep and booming.
That's what it sounds in my head, anyway.
No, it sounds good. I'm not going to lie. You do have a tremble to it that could make men quake in their boots, almost like a Dragon Reborn.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I am one of your other hosts, Derek.
Yes, and then rounding out this illustrious trio, my partner in crime for those off crazy kilter podcasts, John.
Hello, fellow wheelies. Yes, I am one of your other hosts, John.
Interesting.
The blood is calling me.
full moon outside, John, is it?
Yes.
Well, guys, we are
indeed
nearly halfway through this. Mm-hmm. We are halfway through this season. I know I'm enjoying it. Before we get into the spoiler-filled discussion of episode 5, how are you guys feeling? Like, we are there. Derek, you are our novice to this. Very much, John, you are our kind of the Aes Sedai, where I am the Amalind Seat when it comes to our knowledge of this. And where are you guys with this?
I don't even know if I'm the Aes Sedai. I'm loving it. First off, loving the show, but because of some of the changes to the book, and the book is so fresh in my mind, like the start of this episode, I was suddenly like questioning, well, where are they? Are they in Tar Valon or are they in Canolin? And then I was thinking, oh my goodness, have I been giving the wrong name all the way through in the synopsis? And I was just like going, oh my goodness, where is it? So I had to go and look back at the book and go, right, I'm not going mad. And then I was like, yes, this is right. They're just condensing the travel and the number of cities that they reach. So I was like, phew. I can now relax. But I was completely kind of going, have I just gotten everything totally wrong? But it wasn't. It was just because
it wasn't you, it was them.
It was, exactly.
Well, as they say, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Well, it really is. It wasn't me. It was Rafe Lee Judkins. It was all his fault that he unsettled me in my own living room.
Yeah.
But I'm loving it. Absolutely loving the show. And in particular, this episode was really, really good.
Yeah,
excellent.
And
And
I'm really liking the world expanding that they're doing throughout the show. And I think one of the good things about the show, knowing that there's a season 2 and potentially season 3 on the way, season 2 filming, season 3 hopefully coming very soon afterwards, that really helps with allowing this show to breathe more than we get in other shows. You know, these kind of shows need time to set up their world, or else when it gets to season 3, they'll have run through only story or only action. Whereas this episode was a lot about how people in this world deal with situations, deal with death, for example. Things that we wouldn't get in other shows. It would just pass over those in the first season and kind of deal with them later down the line. So I'm liking a show like this that has time to breathe, and really enjoying the world and how it's been rolled out slowly, but with a lot of movement in some ways as well. It's going fast and slow at the same time, which is really good.
And look, the book is known for it's not the Lord of the Rings where we get a 3-chapter kind of discussion on breakfast, and second breakfast and fourth breakfast. But it still had these quite large gaps of kind of travel time and discussions. So I can see why they've condensed a lot of that and kind of decided to omit elements. So, but I think personally, I'm loving it. I knew I would, but I'm also loving the fresh choices and how they've decided to, and what they've decided to condense and what they've decided to prioritize as a lore. So this is something you, as a brand new viewer of this series, should understand and kind of be and aware of. And the choices are very interesting, because I personally would have gone a different, I would have gone similar, but I still would have made some different choices. And I'm actually understanding, it's usually with our second viewing that you kind of see a different perspective. Yeah. The first one is like, ooh, shiny. Yeah. Second one is you kind of get into some of the details.
Yeah, like as a new viewer, it would make absolutely no difference to me if two characters are having a conversation in a completely different city than they're having now. If the conversation is taking place, and that's the important element of it, is that that the context of what's going on is fulfilled within the storyline, then that doesn't matter to me. One thing to call out, there was an interview with Rafe Lee Judkins about the approach to the show and the approach to the books. And one of the things that's really important to call out, it is also to do with budget. When you're writing a book, you're writing things on a page and you're saying, brand new city, describe the city. That fills up a couple of chapters, grand. Put character in background who is important in book 5 of this story, grand. He's very clear. He's not going to cast someone in season 1 who's not going to appear for 5 years when the show hasn't been confirmed for 5 seasons. So he's very clear. If someone's really important in book 5, I want to make sure I cast the right actor who is available at that time to play that role when that comes up, if it comes up. And in the same way, they're not going to create an entire city or an entire village if it's only going to appear for 5 minutes in one episode now because it's important in the future. He'll deal with that down the line, basically.
Exactly. And it's different mediums. You know, the world building that Robert Jordan did was to go through the world and describe and explain different aspects of it as they move through the different towns, at least in the first book. That's what I was taking on board. Here, they can do a wide shot to show the expanse of the Camelin Plains right there and then. Mm-hmm. You know, it's completely different medium, and so it's different ways of doing it, and they have different techniques, and this is absolutely right to do. I mean, can you imagine if it was, you know, episode 2, we're at the ferry. Episode 3, we're at Berlion. Episode 4, we're at Shadar Lagoth. Episode 5, White Bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd go insane. So, like, you have to, you know, in terms of the medium of TV and visually, it doesn't work. And so, I think it's just really good choices in adapting the book for TV. And so, but as I say, it just confused me at the start of, I was like, uh-oh.
Absolutely. I think that's enough preamble to the episode itself. But 2 quick things, since Chris, you haven't been able to join us for the feedback section where we've been getting our thoughts from our fellow wheelies. You may have missed that we have had one vote, which has cast the deciding decision on what we call the fans of Wheel of Time. We're going to be calling them Wheelies from now on, thanks to Angie Arhus, who liked the name. So it's
Wheelies it is.
And also, speaking of names, we have been called out for the amount of different ways that we've been pronouncing Egwene in the show. I made a clear note throughout this episode. On the show, she's being called Egwene, so that is what we have to try and stick with. A little insight to our podcast throughout the show, Why the Last Man. There's a character called 355, and in order to ensure that we didn't mispronounce her name, it was written out in full letters as 3, the word 50, and the number 5, so that we didn't mistake it. So I may be changing every spelling of Egwene to Eggwayne, so we pronounce it correctly from now on.
Well, that is true. That is true, and that's a good thing. To do that, because I did like one of the suggestions of Egwene. I quite like that. That would be my pet. That would be my pet name for Egwene.
That does sound like yours, yes.
Egwene.
So I think I called this out with John on the second episode, which was for years, like nearly a decade plus, I have been pronouncing these words in my head by myself. Never have I heard them uttered aloud by anyone. Mm-hmm. And now, Egwene, it is going forward then.
There we go.
Excellent stuff.
Yes. But enough, as you said, of the details, and thank you for that feedback for everyone on those feedback sessions. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to make them. But let's get into discussions on this episode, episode 5. Derek, do you want to tell us who gave us what?
Absolutely. Once again, this series is based on the book series by Robert Jordan. The showrunner for the show is Rafe Lee Judkins. This episode was written by Celine Song, who's a staff writer on this season of the show, but this is her first episode writing credit for Wheel of Time. The episode was directed by Salli Richardson-Whitfield, directed numerous shows after being an actor, has directed episodes of Altered Carbon and American Gods, and we've spoken about her work before because she directed episodes of The Punisher Season 2 and Luke Cage Season 2.
Excellent stuff. Welcome on board, Celine, and good to have you back, Salli.
Exactly.
Yes.
John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis of this episode of Wheel of Time, episode 5, Blood Calls Blood?
Sure. All roads lead to Tar Valon as our heroes begin to converge on the White Tower. With a month past since Logain's forces attacked the Aes Sedai camp, he enters Tar Valon as their prisoner to face judgment by the Amalind Seat. Moiraine, Lan, and the other Aes Sedai and their warders mourn the loss of their fallen brethren. But Stepin has taken the death of his Aes Sedai, Kerene, hard, and his grief knows no bounds. While Lan attempts to comfort him, it all becomes too much for Stepin. As a glorious sunrise shimmers over Tar Valon, the warders and Aes Sedai must say goodbye to another of their ranks, as Stepin releases himself of his grief and loss. Rand and Mat, having escaped the Fade, also make it to Tar Valon, where they treat themselves to comfy beds at a busy tavern. But Mat has become more and more withdrawn and tetchy, and Rand gets increasingly concerned that he has brought his friend to great danger in Tar Valon, the stronghold of the Aes Sedai power, as he realises that his friend could truly be a male channeler or Sedin of the true source, as warned by Tom. But as Mat is tormented all day and all night of visions from the farmstead, Rand meets Loal, an Ogier, in the tavern library. Looking to help Rand, Loal brings a familiar wisdom to see Mat, as the two are reunited with Nynaeve. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Tar Valon, Egwene and Perrin run into and are captured by a familiar face, the questioner Chal Valdor of the White Cloaks. Believing Egwene and Perrin to be an Aes Sedai and her warder, he coldly and clinically interrogates the two companions, forcing an ultimatum on the two of them. Either Egwene confesses to channeling the One Power and will be killed, if not, Perrin will be killed. With wolves howling nearby in the woods, Valdor tortures Perrin and his eyes become a brilliant golden yellow. With the White Cloak distracted, Egwene attempts to use her limited control of the One Power to no effect. But as Valdor ominously approaches Egwene to take her hands, wolves start to attack the White Cloak encampment, and Perrin finds the strength to break his bonds and stand up to Valdor. In the ensuing chaos, Egwene and Perrin escape their captivity protected by the wolves, and Baldur lies stabbed in his tent.
It has been an action-packed episode.
Lots of, as you say, just world building here, certainly reaching Tar Valon and that fantastic CGI, this island in a river. And that was just spectacular. I loved that. I thought Rand looked very sort of elfish with his green cloak on and the bow over his back and shoulder. And certainly then a few other bits of mythology and lore with Perrin coming in here, as well as the introduction of a new species within this world as well, with Loal.
Can I make one minor complaint about the show so far?
Yes.
Rand's bow bag. I hate it. It just seems really silly. We've been watching archers since back in the time of Robin Hood, and they all just throw their bow over their shoulder. I don't understand why he has a bag that he sticks his bow into. It seems really odd.
I suppose it's to keep it getting muddy. It is. We've talked about this before. It's the bowstring to stop it getting wet, so it's in there so it doesn't get muddy from walking and stuff, I'm assuming.
But half of it's hanging out and half of it's in, so it doesn't make sense. It just looks weird, and every time I see it from behind, I'm like, oh yeah, he isn't carrying it over his shoulder like every other archer in history.
Well,
he's carrying it in a bag.
He did this time, and it looks cool.
It does look much cooler when he carries it over his shoulder. So, But anyway, it just annoys me when I see it from behind because I've never seen it in any other medium before. I'm surprised somebody would stitch up a bag for something that you...
I must say that, Rand looked very striking there, sort of on that escarpment looking over, viewing the White City of Tar Valon, or on the White Tower, I should say.
Yeah.
But I do really like that Matt looks increasingly more and more as though the stag do the night before was even more sort of epic than it was the episode before. Looking sort of disheveled and really with the mother of all hangovers in his kind of tatty dressing gown type cloak and coat. So I really like that. There's kind of the sort of the difference between the two of them, but which is a good thing given what Matt is going through. But I mean, he looks like he's been on a proper bender.
Well, since you gentlemen brought it up, let's jump into our main spoke, our first spoke, I should say. Let's talk about the Matt, Rand, and the arrival in Tar Valon, and actually everyone's arrival to a degree in Tar Valon. First and foremost, what did you think of the White Tower? The gleaming city that is Tar Valon. You've heard so much about this place. Is it what you expected? Is it like, what did you think? Did you have the same awe as Rand? Or was it kind of, were you willing to throw fruit at it like Logain?
I really like the city. I was surprised that there was a city. I kind of felt that from the descriptions before that the Aes Sedai lived in a tower away from everybody, but it seems like they are supporting a massive city around them, which actually makes more logical sense. It seems to be a seat of power. So of course you're going to have a big city set up around it. A couple of interesting little things I picked up from the conversation on the way in. Really surprised, first of all, that we had a month's jump. And
exactly.
There was only one place that Rand and Matt had stayed since the start of the season, and that was the barn, where they left Tom behind to fight off the Fade. So that was the first surprise that it was a month had passed and they'd just been walking. Secondly, that it was Tom that told them about the inn to stay in this area. That kind of comes in dialogue, but I don't know when they would have had that conversation. But anyway, I'm sure they
off-screen conversation.
And then there was just a note that Rand says when they arrive, the first thing he says when they see Tar Valon is he says he knows those mountains. My understanding of Rand is that he has lived in Two Rivers his whole life, so this must be something connected to a dream or a prophecy that he has that he's had in his head, whatever those dreams are that he has. But he must have seen it somewhere before. But he just makes a quick mention of it, and then it's never mentioned again in the episode. So I just thought that was interesting.
Okay, yeah, because I took that because he saw the mountain before the city, and then he went up the kind of slope, and there before him was Tar Valon, with the mountain / I think volcano behind it. So I just assumed it was the tales of Tar Valon.
Right.
That even though he was in Two Rivers, he knew about Tar Valon, and maybe a previous Gleeman at some stage had shown drawings of it or something. I don't know. But yeah, I know what you mean. I guess, how does he know this? But, is it something he's remembering from the dreams, or potentially with this connection to the old blood of the Manetheren,
or something. Yeah, something like that.
They are dropping throughout this episode and throughout many of these episodes. They're dropping foreshadowing for each of the main characters that they too potentially could be the Dragon Reborn.
Absolutely, and there's a lot more of that later on between Rand and Loel later on. I just wanted to make mention of the fact that he says he has seen this mountain before, and then it's kind of dropped. So
just to note, that is the Dragon Mount. That is the mountain where the previous dragon did start to crack the world.
Interesting.
So it is connected to the prophecy of the Dragon Reborn.
There we go. Okay. Excellent.
There we are. So that is all I will say. And again, it's one of those nicely put in there.
It is interesting though, because I have to say, like yourself, I thought Tar Valon was going to be just the tower, like Saruman's tower in the Two Towers from Lord of the Rings. Not to say that it needs to replicate that, but I think the description was very much, they're kind of in this ivory tower in effect, and that's part of the disconnect that people can have with the Aes Sedai, as much as they also can have the opposite view of them. So I was kind of I didn't expect the sprawling city around the base, but I loved that. I love what they did, but this is marrying, as a shorthand, Camelin, the royal seat of Andor, with the Queen, with then the seat of the Tar Valon, because effectively what happens here at Tar Valon is kind of a mixture of what happens in those two cities, as well. So, but it was really impressive. I thought this just looked spectacular.
Yeah. Because it was really interesting. We have the Aes Sedai effectively parading Logain through the city and the streets, showing that they've captured another false dragon, effectively someone that could have challenged them for power, or could have broken the world, I suppose. But they're parading them through the streets to get the reaction of the public, showing them how powerful they are almost. So I thought that was quite interesting. So there is, as I say, the White Tower is a seat of power, and these people surrounding them, like any king or queen would treat their subjects in the city. They have to have a show of power, to kind of show them who's in control. So, I thought that was quite interesting. And we had the usual, people staring on from the streets and throwing rotten vegetables and fruit at the prisoner being, taken through the city. So,
I did like that Landrin, and one of the other Aes Sedai were sat in chairs very close to where he was getting pelted, and one of the warders said it was nice when Landrin got a tomato, sort of deflected tomato to her head. At least it's red, I guess. So it wouldn't show up on her gowns. But I really thought that sort of parade of Logain was quite good, and in particular, just that recognition across his face, to Rand and Matt, who are up in balcony. But then also that I think there's a bit of reality and a bit of Matt's imagination here, because Matt begins to imagine or see more as you have hysterical, sort of maniacal laughing coming from Logain, almost this recognition of someone who also can channel the true source. So I really like that. But I think part of it was maybe some recognition, and then it moved into the Matt's mind. But I don't know for sure, quite frankly. But I was thinking, if it was, even though we've seen him gentled at the end of the last episode, I guess he doesn't have that connection. But I just wondered whether there was more here than I know so far. So I thought this was quite intriguing.
Yeah, I don't think Logain moves at all in the cage. I think he's sitting still the whole time, and it's all in Matt's mind.
So he doesn't even look up.
No.
So throughout this episode, the title of this episode is Blood Calls Blood. Mm-hmm. Throughout this episode, we get examples of blood calls blood. Mm-hmm. So potentially the false dragon calling the blood of the false dragon, calling the real dragon reborn, noticing and understanding. The two warders, blood calling blood. The two Aes Sedai, blood calling blood. Mm-hmm. The two Rivers folks coming together, Nynaeve and Rand and Matt coming back together, blood calling blood.
Yeah.
My assumption is it was repeatedly done like that as a fantastic kind of callback to each of the different sects, the groups. The way I took it was there was a look of recognition, the initial first shot.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And then everything else is Matt's
brain.
Addled brain. Yeah.
Exactly.
One of them potentially is the Dragon Reborn. Mm-hmm. So you are and this is the man who thought he was, but he understands. We don't understand within this frame of this show how much he has been told. What now he's been gentled. What can he see? What can he still see the weaves of the one power, or can he see nothing? There's a lot of lore building there, like potentially if Matt or Rand stands in front of him, he will say something huge, but at the same point, maybe it is all just in, and that's what I really liked about this, because I saw this and I was like, oh wow, like there's just this ferocious kind of craziness, fanatic look, and you're like, but that's not that's just all in Matt's mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's good because either they're keeping the red herring of Logain going by just that, as you say, that first shot where he looks up and the return look from Matt and Rand, or he is just the red herring.
Yeah. Speaking of the inn, we are introduced to another member of perhaps the group of some of the one of the character long talked about in the books, long discussed. Would he show up? Loial.
Yeah.
He is there. We have seen our first ogre. What did you think?
I was really impressed that they kind of made a joke about how his name is clearly spelt in the book. Since I haven't read the book, I'm taking the joke as one for book readers. He's not an ogre; he's an ogair.
Yes,
because Rand calls him an ogre, and he goes, no, not at all. He's an interesting character. It made me laugh because he reminded me of Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. That the idea that everybody's just very hasty about everything that's going on. Why do they rush into things without properly being prepared for what to expect? I think is the line that he says, which I thought was really interesting. He's not given much in the episode here, much description and much information about who he is or why he's involved.
Or what a steading is that's mentioned briefly, or any of that is.
No, exactly.
It's all very like whoosh. And I was like, oh wow, okay.
It just seems like Rand bumps into this guy in the library and then suddenly he's involved in their business. I don't really know why.
There was a little bit too much of a shorthand, I think, for introducing a character like Loial for me. And I have to say, I thought he was more human than I was expecting.
He should have, exactly. So this is one thing I can see a few people going, ah!
I don't mind for sure, but I just the description, I wasn't expecting that. But again, I can understand why, because it's problematic in the book, because it's almost like they have to sort of sneak him out of places and go at night and so on, and that's fine, but. Yeah, it was just more human than I thought.
Yeah. So in the books, the Ogair are more bestial. And that's why everyone always confuses the Ogair with Trollocs,
right?
For example. So they are these mythical creatures, more like less human, more beast type things, whereas the Ogier are very learned and educated, whereas the Trollocs are, as we saw, care only about the next meal and don't have compassion, etc., etc., etc. So they took a lot of kind of blink and you'll miss it. Oh, he's here. Okay, cool. He's helped out Rand. My hope is that they will get more deeper into that. We will have a Basil exposition scene within the next couple of episodes where you get Rand's or someone kind of asking about the Ogier, getting that explanation for new readers or new viewers. The one that really got me was Jane Farstrider. There's this discussion about a book. About a book where a woman used to, the adventures of Jane Farstrider and how Rand had a friend who used to have a braid like that. And that then, like, that was the quickest kind of down to Nynaeve. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's where I had one slight problem, which is Jane Farstrider is this book that is discussed quite a lot in the book. It's kind of like they talked about it before in the beginning, things like that. So by the time you get to this point, it makes sense. You have the background. Here it is 30 seconds of a conversation and it then leads to Nynaeve. And I was like, you've taken one quick two-step. But again, I think that's from me. What did you guys think?
It felt like an Easter egg for the books. I kind of expected people that have a lot more knowledge of this universe to go, oh, they've mentioned the book. And not to mean anything other than it's something that people carry around or read a lot. It's the Pippi Longstocking of this world or something.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't make the connection until you've just literally said it there, that him saying to Loal that a friend of his has a braid like that is the reason that Loal goes and picks her up from the White Tower. I thought he was sent to the White Tower later to go and get Nynaeve to see if she is available. So that makes even less sense why Loal has gone there. I thought he was literally sent on a mission by Rand, go find the girl who I mentioned earlier on, who has that braid. But if it was literally from that conversation, he just happens to come across her and bring her back, that's more surprising.
He basically says he was in the garden and bumped into this lady with the braid from Jane Farstrider and mentioned the two lads from Two Rivers. And that's the case. I was like, oh, you took a bit too much of a step, but okay, we'll go with it because we're traveling fast here.
We have an economy here of time. Yes.
Exactly, but I think this is the balance. You know, like there is an economy, but if you're going to introduce Loal and you're going to put him in prosthetics and do the actor's going to be put in prosthetics, and you've still got the library, just spend a little bit of time. I'm not saying, it's half an hour of Rand and Loal having a conversation in the library of the inn, but just have that sort of more direct conversation, rather than just simply floating through a load of stuff that, viewers just maybe aren't going to comprehend, and make, it more obvious in this case, because it can be. It doesn't need to be shrouded in this instance. It's, this is a meeting of Rand with Loal, where Rand is very accepting of him, and he is normally treated differently from other humans, and that's where this bond and friendship, nascent friendship begins. So I think they should have spent a little bit more time, given the importance of this character, at least from my perspective after reading a few of the books, and just his species.
Well, let's talk about the bit they did spend some time on this in the library discussion between these two characters, which will clearly come back at a later stage because they spent so little time on everything else that this one was obviously important to them. Loal calls out the fact that Rand could possibly be an ale man, based on his red hair, and that he is different to other humans around, effectively.
Yep.
That's quite interesting. I haven't heard anything like that at all before. About Rand before. He's a shepherd's son, effectively, or a shepherd himself, I suppose, from the small village. Potential for the reborn dragon, but now another possible difference to everybody else. He's possibly another species entirely.
Yeah. Well, we saw an Aiel in the mining town.
Yep.
That Tom, he was the one in the cage. And it's been floated and dropped here, and then we have this conversation, and they are effectively from the wastelands. We heard about, if they have the scarf, they're sort of mouth covering down.
Oh, yes.
You're probably all right. If it's up, then,
you're
they
dead.
mean business and you're dead. They're potentially, kind of a bit like that they would align potentially with dark forces. But I think that's about as much as I really know. I think it's more that they keep themselves to themselves a bit out in the waste, and the wasteland.
Interesting, because I definitely wouldn't have made the connection between those two, especially because, Lowell's calling him an ale man. I was almost thinking it sounded like a slight change to human, because he has a slight change to ogre as his name.
Yeah.
He was calling Rand a slight change to human, but interesting. Okay.
They're essentially, it's a different
race of humans.
Well, not even race. It would just be like and it's a different land, but you're known because you have red hair, essentially.
It's like coming from County Kerry, or coming from Dublin, I guess. It's that kind of difference.
More American versus Irish.
Right.
There's a connection. You're both. There's Irish Americans. There's American Irish, but they're mostly two different. Red hair comes a lot from the Irish people. And you don't see it that often.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I almost thought it was a connection between the two of them, because he was saying you're a different species to all the other people around here, like me. There
is, and I think at some point they're going to get to it. They're dropping all these hints throughout this season. They are going to, at a certain point, tell the prophecy of the Dragon Reborn. And when they say that prophecy, they will, a lot of these Easter eggs, a lot of these points that have been dropped will then finally point to who is the Dragon Reborn out of the five.
Yeah.
So it's essentially these little things like the Aiel, the Dragon Mount, the blood calling blood, the channeling, all of those things will start to add up to a certain person. But I can't wait to see what they do and I'm hoping they do it this season.
Well, it's also filling in for the conversation that wasn't, at least maybe to make this again more obvious, between Rand and his father Tam at Emmons Field and the Two Rivers.
Yeah.
So it wasn't included in episode 1, but this is effectively hinting at the provenance of Rand.
Right. Right. What's really interesting about this is when we started this point for the episode, I did not think we'd be only talking about Rand. I thought it was when you watch the episode, it feels more like an episode about Matt and how much he's losing his mind. But when you look back on the episode and watch it the second time, there's so much going on in the background with Rand, in conversations and in little dropped lines. But there is one major thing that comes out between Rand and Matt, which is the pact that Matt tries to create. Yes. With Rand, after seeing Logain going through the streets, he effectively says, if I ever get close to a person like that, will you kill me? Because I'll do the same for you. If you lose your mind and you are the true dragon, if you lose your mind, I'll kill you as long as you'll kill me if I'm the true dragon, kind of thing. So that's an interesting pact between the two of them.
Very much so. And I think it's a good one, especially with, as we kind of wrap up this spoke, how we leave Matt at the end of this episode. He is progressively getting worse and worse, to the point where, like, Nynaeve barely touches him and he snaps. But also he looks like he's on death's door. So whatever is wrong with him is progressing at a pace that is beyond normal, you could say.
Yeah, it's taking it out of him, definitely. Yes. And to what extent that is going to be fatal or not, I guess we'll have to see.
Exactly. So, with that, gentlemen, let's move on to our second spoke which is another big aspect of this. And I'm not sure which of you decided to name it this beautiful way. Derek, I'm assuming it is you. Mm-hmm. We are going to call this stepping out.
I know.
Sorry. Well, he certainly didn't. He certainly didn't step up, did he? So
no. I'm sorry. It was quite a serious storyline in the episode, but I couldn't resist calling the scene stepping out.
It was brilliant. I very much approve on all levels. Gallo humor is brilliant. But let's discuss what you guys saw. Like we saw the essentially everyone coming back to the White Tower and the burial of Kerene, the Aes Sedai, who is no more, who died in the previous episode, and Stepin is her warder, and he is wearing his pain on his face and his emotions there very much, and he's carrying her ring, and a lot of the story is about how he is feeling now that, as they say, a warder should not outlive their Aes Sedai. And it's him having to deal with that loss and that connection being severed. And we learn a lot about, say, Lan's connection to the rest of the warders and how deep that connection between the warder and the Aes Sedai goes, and that feeling of losing your arm. And it's interesting to how it plays out, because he even takes her serpent ring, the Aes Sedai ring, and he basically adds it back to the flame of Tar Valon and allows that gold to be put back into recirculation, essentially.
But recycle.
Exactly.
Well, I do have a question about that.
Sure.
I was wondering, because it looks like this is where all rings are created for the Aes Sedai, that they're created from this pool, and it kind of comes into the White Cloaks later on. I wonder, has some of the power left that pool because some of the rings have never been returned to it? Some of the sisters who've been killed by the Inquisitor, the Questioner. Has that taken away some of the power of the Aes Sedai because they haven't had those rings returned to this pool? Because it seems like such a big moment when Stepin is melting down the ring and setting it back in at the flame of Tar Valon. It seems like such a big moment and such a big ceremony to do it this way that, while I know there is the loss of Kerene, of course, that's the big element of it, I wonder was some of the power of the Aes Sedai taken away because they never got the rings back of their former dead sisters, I suppose.
Yeah, there's less, it's more symbolic. The gold itself doesn't have, power. Certain other things can sometimes have additional power, but within this, it's more of a symbolic that all things come from those rings, kind of like it's the symbolism.
Okay, yeah, no, I thought that was quite powerful, the melting of the ring. I really enjoyed that. I thought this was really good up to a point. Actually, I loved the burial of Kerene and all the others. Like, they bury the king of Ghealdan as well. So it's enemies as well as Aes Sedai and their warders, all being buried out. And then I loved all the rituals and ceremonies that they're doing here. I love that lore. And of course, like we've talked about before, that sense of the bond, I think you really feel it here with Stepin. And not only that, but in that sort of the final moment as well. But it was really interesting because I was increasingly thinking, because they kept talking about his future, and because he sort of came to Nynaeve's door and asking for some tea, I was just wondering if she were to become an Aes Sedai, would he become her warder? So I thought that was really intriguing to me. And of course, ultimately, I was totally wrong, because the way it went was that, the grief, the loss, the pain is so acute, so deep, so hurtful, because of the intensity of this bond between the Warder and the Aes Sedai, that he actually just can't, he can't view any future without her.
Yeah.
And ultimately commits suicide and knifes himself in the stomach and just bleeds out. So, and I have to say, I was like going, oh, okay, I wonder, because they were layering in stuff about his, him growing up and effectively how he got to that point, and I thought it was really good. And so I totally didn't think that we were going to have his suicide, effectively, or his, as I said, just releasing himself from this huge burden of grief, pain, and hurt that I guess was just too much for him. So I wasn't really expecting that. But having said that, again, the ritual done by Lan on Stepin at his funeral, observing those rites, I thought was phenomenal. I mean, just seeing the way the camera moved between Lan, who just that expression of his own anguish at losing one of his fellow warders, seeing him cry, and seeing Moiraine just crying as well. Again, just showing that bond. Because really just hit home the power of the bond, because earlier on when Nynaeve, I think in one of the earlier episodes, when she's putting some kind of paste and medicine onto Moiraine's wound, she says, I've heard about your bond between the Aes Sedai and their warder, so you're going to feel this. And she put it on, and there seemed to be no expression from Lan at all. So you didn't really get the sense, I didn't anyway, I didn't get the sense of the bond. And I think that's what I got here, with it being so connected to death.
Yeah.
And so on with Stepin. I thought it was really, really good. And certainly that final, ceremony, I just thought it was really intense and really well done. Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like we heard in dialogue before, we heard Lan say if he has a drink that Moiraine will feel it. She gets more emotional. So we have heard that there is that connection, but there is also something extra, I think, in this scene. There are tears in his eyes. He looks at Moiraine. She has tears in her eyes, but it's almost like he asks for permission to break his stoicism for this moment. It's like he asks, you will feel my full grief if I release it here. Is that okay almost? And there is that kind of moment between the two of them before he releases everything, and she feels every moment of it and is almost absorbed and following his complete lead in what's happening here. She takes up the banging of her chest along with the rest of the warders. It looks like she is now, the bond is complete in that moment. And visible to the world more than the way both of them are. Both of them are very silent partners a lot to other people, but it seems that in that moment he's saying, is it okay? And she allows him to do it.
It's even her taking up the beating of the chest, because like it feels so primeval what they're doing in terms of that expression. And you don't really associate it with Moiraine, who's quite noble, this noble woman, but she is doing that as well. And I was wondering, is that because he's doing it, that the bond means that she must also beat her own chest in this sort of way to honor the death of Stepin. So I thought this was just superb, to be honest.
100%. For every aspect for me on this was like the one additional part, which was the passing of the bond, which is when Stepin and Lan are having that final drink, when Stepin drugs Lan after kind of getting it from Nynaeve, he goes, would you would you do it? Would you, like, go beyond and leave Moiraine if she was to pass? And then we do hear, like, they start joking about it, like, well, would you be up to share your sister with these two other men? And he, like, they make you believe up until that point, until Lan wakes up, that is what Stepin is going to do. He is going to join, and this happens, and this is kind of the more normal. But then seeing this, the guilt and the anguish to that additional part.
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether it is normal. It seems like they're making an exception for Stepin because he has survived his Aes Sedai, and that's really unusual that he would.
It is.
Like, I know, again, we had the same feeling, John, that when Nynaeve becomes an Aes Sedai, if that's what she's going to become, that would make sense that they've introduced Stepin to be her warder in future. But when you hear his story and his history about how he found himself in the service of the Aes Sedai and how he found himself in the service of Kerene in particular, you're kind of going, well, his future story with Nynaeve, how did you meet her? Well, I had this amazing backstory and this amazing reason for being with my last Aes Sedai, and then I just joined her. You know, there's that bond and that connection that he had with Kerene was irreplaceable. So when you think about his actual story about how they met, he would never have been able to join another Aes Sedai, no matter who it is. Which I think is why this line in the show, this storyline in the show is so affecting, is because he has realized he couldn't continue any further because not just that he'd failed in his duty, but because that bond that he had with his Aes Sedai is gone, and he would never be able to replicate that again.
Yeah, no, it was hugely powerful.
Yeah. Let's also speak about this other piece in the tower, Nynaeve, and her recruitment to the Aes Sedai.
Yeah, interesting one. Nynaeve effectively locked in the tower, like Rapunzel.
Let down your hair.
Yeah, it's like, I'll be back later. Don't worry. You just stay here. And then we have Liandrin coming in to investigate and work out what's going on here and how she can use it to her advantage, is what it seems.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then just lets Nynaeve out to go for a walk and disappear into town. So it's interesting. It's like as if Moiraine wanted something in her back pocket, so stuck Nynaeve in a room, didn't tell anybody about it. But of course, Liandrin's going to know because Liandrin was on the road with them. So of course she's going to know and seek her out. But what do you think, Chris? What do you think of this?
I enjoyed it. Like, Nynaeve, it is called out. She potentially is going to, especially it's more Moiraine and Liandrin when they discuss that Nynaeve is potentially one of the strongest sisters in generations. Mm-hmm. Like this power, and any order within the Aes Sedai who gets her as a novice will be huge for them, because and we also hear more throughout this that Liandrin is building a lot of sway in the tower. And there is different factions forming behind Liandrin, behind the Amalind Seat, and those who, to a degree, potentially support Moiraine and what she does. Because we hear that the Amalind Seat and Moiraine go up against each other and do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. So essentially, this is getting more and more interesting, because then Nynaeve becomes a political toy. It is essentially like a toy between Moiraine, the Amalind Seat, who we still haven't fully met yet, and Liandrin and the Reds. And the Reds hate men. The Reds hate any man who potentially can channel. So if any of the Two Rivers boys or men are the Dragon Reborn, then where does that place Nynaeve as well? So it's a really interesting point.
And I mean, that's the danger that Rand is acutely aware of as well. And I do, in terms of that conversation in the White Tower, I love that Moraine's effectively retort to Liandrin is, well, she likes men. She doesn't despise them like yourself. And we also do get that the Yellow Sisters are effectively the medic and the ambulance service of the Aes Sedai as well in this one, because her first use of the one power effectively healed everyone from the wounds inflicted by Logain. So I thought, again, another little bit of world building in terms of these the colours of the different Asia of the Aes Sedai. So again, yes, we now have our 999 call for the Aes Sedai.
Yeah. There is many of them, and I can't wait to when we get that full discussion to kind of break down a bit more, be like the browns, the greens, the yellows, the reds, the blues, and the yellows. There are more.
And just since you mention it about her healing everybody with her power, did you hear the little conversation between Stepin and Lan about the fact that she used her power to heal Lan's neck possibly means that Nynaeve has feelings for Lan?
Yes.
That's an interesting little development there, considering Lan is effectively bonded.
Married.
To Moiraine.
Again, it's almost like a marriage. He is connected directly to Moiraine.
Yeah, and he kind of says, that's on her. That's on Nynaeve. It's nothing to do with me. That's her feelings, her emotions, and she'll just have to go find somebody else, basically.
Yeah.
But three's a crowd is not necessarily in the dictionary of the Aes Sedai. Even though I know Moiraine isn't green, she's blue, but I guess you can get greeny blue, turquoise seas. So I was just wondering, not three's a crowd in this case.
Maybe.
That's more with warders, but we can discuss that at a later point in the
rewarders.
That's true, the warders, but let's move on. Anything else on this spoke, or are you happy to move on to the third and final act of the spoke?
I think we're happy to move on. I think that's everything from the point about poor old Stepin.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Spoke 3, here we come. Let the spoken word come from Chris.
Yes, let's discuss the White Cloaks catching Perrin and Egwene. So we this is a good one. This is an interesting. We do see how the Tinkers, the Tuatha stand against the White Cloaks as they come to. They are very close to Tar Valon, by the way, as well. So we hear this. So that means the White Cloaks, who are at odds with the Aes Sedai, are also close to Tar Valon, which is interesting since they do not get on.
Well, absolutely.
But the Tuatha basically form a peace shield, allowing their bodies to act as the shield, eventually stopping the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light, getting or catching Perrin and Egwene. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Well, as they say, they stop up until a point.
For a minute.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
literally a hot second.
Yeah, I think just the way the episode was playing out with everybody meeting in Tar Valon, I thought this was the use of the Tuatha was to... That's how they were going to be used in the story, was to block the White Cloaks from catching Perrin and Egwene, and then they would turn up in the city. I just thought that was the way it would, that's the way it would play out. But it turns out to be much more brutal.
Yeah,
than I
definitely.
expected it to be. With Perrin and Egwene being effectively taken in for questioning by the questioner, and him torturing Perrin and effectively saying to Egwene, the choice is hers. Either she isn't a channeler and can't channel, and that means Perrin's going to die, or she can channel and then she dies and he'll be released free. Yeah, pretty brutal.
Absolutely. I mean, he's nasty. He's nasty. And I have to say, I want to give Abdul Salas, who plays Charles Valdor, absolute props. I think that cold, sort of almost bureaucratic sort of harshness and ruthlessness is, he just puts across so well. I mean, I was there going, I really would not want to be in that tent with him. And, him dissecting the suckling pig whilst he's, we've had the spiky bird that he's eaten in one mouthful. Now he's got effectively a baby piglet that's been spit roasted, and he's dissecting in front of Egwene and Perrin, almost foreshadowing him going to dissect Perrin in that kind of catch-22. One of them is going to die, whatever they decide to show and tell, ultimately, or not for Egwene. And so, yeah, it was just really brutal, and it really gave a great sense of tension, I thought, here with him, because you just knew it potentially wasn't going to end well, and you were like, how are they going to get out of this? And part of it is something that I've been waiting for a long time, which is the golden yellow eyes of Perrin, and that seeming connection with the wolves that we've seen them loitering around him in the other episodes, but here
we saw him licking the blood of his leg
and licking, more than loitering, exactly,
and guiding him.
Licking, loitering, guiding, yes, and this was, I was waiting for this, so I was really pleased with how this was shown. Just, I guess that shock, of Valdor effectively slicing up his back, and the trauma, because we do here have him, confessing to Egwene about killing his wife as to how it went down, even though it was by accident, it was a reflex. He tells her here, and
effectively says to sacrifice him because of it as well. Yeah,
that he's happy if she keeps her channeling and her connection to the true source out of the way of this white cloak. I do like, I did like Egwene's sort of feeble use of the power that, you've had Nynaeve in the last episode where, it just looked like the start of a nuclear explosion about to go off. And here you get this ball forming in, Egwene's hand, and it's like, fires it off, and poof. And it's just Child Valdor sort of looking at her going, you'll need to do more than that for it to hurt me. And I was wondering about that with the White Cloaks is, if effectively he's taking their hands so they can't channel the one power with their hands. Although I think he was saying something along the lines that, that there are some stories that say that it can be channeled without their hands, but it's almost like a first line of defense for him so that he can question them. But he seems to revel in the interrogation. He's got the suspicion that she is a channeler, and he doesn't know how powerful she could be, and it could get him killed. And I'm like, I just wondered if he does have some protection, through the way of the light. If this is a bit of a counterpoint to Tar Valon and the Aes Sedai. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it kind of went just sort of poofed off him.
The first attempt was the little ball, the poof, and his joke about that. And then the second weave that she's actually doing while keeping him talking is that she's concentrating on Perrin's bonds. So you see very slowly a small weave of the one power kind of wrapping around the white power, the white weave wrapping around the bonds and then sparking into fire.
So a true magician then, in terms of the distraction, in order...
The misdirect.
Yeah, the misdirect. That's the word, so, yes.
Egwene is a master of misdirection. Let's say that. She knows how to hold and command the White Cloaks in this, and Child Valdor. Yeah. But it doesn't end well for him.
No, it doesn't.
No.
Like a blade in the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
Of all things, if anything, I would have gone deeper and killed. But sure, let's just go for wounding. Some of the other folks do not get away so lucky.
No, they don't.
A wolf to the neck, We see one gentleman definitely, I'm running out of the tent. Oh no, I'm getting pulled back into the tent.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really
I was waiting for the wolves. I was waiting for this. And seeing Perrin Goldeneyes on screen was a moment for me.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Also, you get to see parts of it for him where he goes, we see a wolf, definitely. He understands what it's trying to tell him.
Okay.
To a degree, because he runs and goes, no, they're okay. They're not here to hurt us. And then the wolf basically is saying, stop. He understands to a degree, not sure how much, and then the wolf then goes after another child.
Yeah. I really enjoyed as well, because the wolf attack, fab.
Yes.
But I love that all the way through these scenes in Child Valdor's tent, whilst he's being brutalized effectively and sliced, that you have the sound of the wolves wafting in from the surrounding woods and forest that they've put there, and they've set up camp. So that was just a really nice touch, to be honest, because it felt like you could feel that energy sort of building with the wolves until the attack, and certainly with his eyes turning this golden yellow. So this was, I agree with you, Chris. For me, this was a moment that I was really looking forward to.
Yeah. And I'm going to give a quick hat tip. So every now and again, this show is beautiful to look at, like the first view of Tar Valon and the Shining White Tower. And then, surprisingly then the battle, say in the last one, the big battle with the One Power and the folks. But here, for me, one of the biggest ones, which I didn't expect, was just the wolves fighting, because it could have looked, they had wolves running around, and obviously those wolves are CGI'd. It could have looked pretty bad, but getting these multiple wolves running and attack dogs and making them look like wolves and things like that, well trained, fantastic, I think.
Excellent.
Yeah, really, really good. But there's a lot of lore, I guess, to come that will be explained with Perrin and the wolves, and certainly, there is a character from the books, and I know it's probably through economy. I actually felt the character was really important because of associations with other people within the world, even in book one. And I suspect that this person, maybe this mentor for Perrin, may come in somewhere else again, like how we talk about. But it's another nice sort of element that's been added to Perrin, in the same way, I think, with Matt with the dagger. That there's these different elements that are building to these three lads, as well as with Egwene and with Nynaeve, and it's building really nicely. I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with it because you guys are excited about it. I'm kind of guessing what's going on and piecing things together. I suppose one of the challenges for me is that I don't know how this works in this world, and I need more information about that. We have Perrin walking along with the Tuathan, and he's giving out to them, going, "Why are you letting your wolves feed on everything they come across? You're destroying the environment. You're letting them attack everything." And then they're coming in and killing the White Cloaks, and he's got the yellow eyes. I get all that. I saw all that on screen, but I'm getting no connection in the storyline as to what's actually happening and what it could mean. I'm guessing that because there are things like werewolves in other horror stories, that it's something like werewolves, but I don't know how that works in the Wheel of Time world. I don't know whether he's someone that controls wolves, or is that what the Tuathan do, that the wolves are all not humans transforming into wolves, that they're just controlled by the Tuathan. I just need a bit more of that for this moment to make sense and to matter. So I'm sure we're going to get it in the future. At the moment, it just feels like, ooh, that's a bit weird. Where did he get the yellow eyes from? And why aren't the wolves attacking him? Oh, I guess they're friends. The Tuathan are in control of them, and he was with them, so he's not going to attack them. I guess that's what it is. But I need more to be excited about what's going on with Perrin, other than something weird's happening to that guy.
No, I agree.
Welcome to the Wheel of Time. Something weird is happening to that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely agree with you on that. On that, and I mean, I think it's probably as much of a shock to Perrin as it is to you, and that's certainly the case in the book. So the shock element, I think, is quite good. I think it works. I think again, it's
like, does he even know what's happening to him?
Yeah, exactly. It's who is going to explain this to Perrin, because it could be the Tuathan, it could be Loial moving forwards, or it could be someone else. It depends how that fits into, I guess, the adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, gentlemen, I think that kind of wraps up this whole episode and all of our spokes. Does anyone have any notes they want to get out before we get into our final decisions on how much we enjoyed this show?
Only known I have is my favourite line from the episode. As a conversation amongst the warders when they're all kind of hanging out together and kind of commiserating with, and one of the warders says, "My dad tried to kill me when I was 12. Stop your whining." I really like that moment when everything's getting a bit melancholy for these powerful fighters, effectively, and just undercut with a little bit of humour. I thought that was good fun.
Always a good thing. John, anything from yourself?
No more notes from me.
Excellent. Well, with that said, and that, should we say, spoken, Derek, did you enjoy this episode of The Wheel of Time?
Yes, I did. It's the right kind of episode for this kind of show. I mentioned it right up front. This is the type of thing I expect from a show that's going to last a few years, to take some time to develop the world and develop what's going on. My one hang up about Perrin's side of the story not even having enough of that world building to it for any of it to matter to me at the moment. That's my only hang up, but I'm sure we'll get that as the season goes on. I have definitely been enjoying the episode so far, though, and looking forward to episode 6 next week.
Excellent. John, did you enjoy this episode of The Wheel of Time, Blood Calls Blood?
Yes, I did enjoy Blood Calls Blood. I'd give it 4 yellow eyes at night. Sailor's or shepherd's delight, however you want to say it, out of 5. Yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot. For me, the standout really was around the White Cloaks encampment with Child Valdor, the Questioner, who we get his name, terrifying man, and you really felt for the safety of Egwene and Perrin. And I think when TV does that, really superb. You get the reveal of Perrin's yellow eyes, his golden yellow eyes, and that connection with the wolves that has been hinted at through. So that was exciting for me. I really, really enjoyed that a lot. Saying that, I to Derek's point, I do think that there are some elements that I know they have to race through 15 books in 8 seasons if all goes to plan, and I understand that. But I think there might be the need for a few little pauses on some elements for me, and I can understand on Perrin's for sure, because some of that explanation, it has not been delivered yet. And I think Loial is also one of those characters that could have just done with a little breath, a little 5 minutes within this hour of an episode to connect him, to make it more obvious. Not everything needs to be a detective novel that you have to work out. There is some things that, there's plenty of lore and surprises that can happen from these characters. But I think first meeting them in that way, because it felt a little off with Rand, and yet it is, to me, a really nice relationship within the books. And so, but having said that, I love what was added there. I love that Loial could, magic Nynaeve in the yard, in a sense, to sort of get her to the inn. So I'm glad he was introduced here. I loved seeing Rand and Matt and just their relationship here, with Matt deteriorating even further, Rand getting worried, And I think the whole lore around the Warders and the Aes Sedai and that bond and their loss was exceptionally done in this episode. Especially with Stepin having committed suicide because of how bad it was, and then seeing that bond still burning brightly with Moiraine and Lan. I thought that was really, really, really good. So yeah, this is For Yellow Eyes at Night, Sailor's Delight. So Chris, did you enjoy? What did you think of this episode of The Wheel of Time?
Yes, very much I enjoyed it. I can't add much to what you guys have said. My only bit will be at the end of this season 1, looking back, knowing what I know going forward and knowing what potentially they have decided to skip or just completely kind of sidestep or potentially bring in at a later point in the season. I think I'll look at the season as a whole when I make that kind of overarching judgment. Some of the exposition that we don't get in this episode, I think, as you said, that breath could have been used. But that being said, that breath can happen potentially later on. And we will get some of those explanations in a greater sense in 6, 7, 8, as we kind of lead into the reveal of why Perrin's eyes are that colour now, and beyond, etc., etc. So, what's happening to Matt? So I think I'm going to say I really enjoyed it. I have exactly the same feeling as you guys. I think the only bit will be when we look back at season 1 and we do the wrap up, we kind of discuss, did it work? From a brand new, for each of us, did it work from our different viewpoints? And that will be the interesting part.
Yeah. Currently working so far for me, definitely.
Yeah, it's working for me as well.
2 quick notes. Chris, you clarified something for me that I was wondering the whole way through the episode. I was going, why is this guy asking to be called Child Valdor? Have I gotten that right? Because I have no subtitles and I was writing it down going, why is he called Child Valdor? The Children of the Light. So a child is his title.
Yes.
I thought it was a weird thing to say, call me Child, when his name's not Child. His name is Amon, I think. So he's asking them to call him by his title. So like Father Valdor would be.
Exactly. That is it. Child of the Light.
That has
clarified it. They're the questioners. They are basically think of them as a militaristic Catholic church. That is, they have, they're all children of the light. They're Child Valdor, etc., etc. The questioners, the Spanish Inquisition. They also go beyond that, where they have commanders, child, and things like that. There's different titles.
Well, actually, that brings me to my other note, which is that you'd actually compare them to the Spanish Inquisition slightly, but you definitely compare them to the Witchfinders and the Witchfinders General. And I think specifically in the episode here where he poses that question to Egwene, which is effectively either you can channel and you die, or you can't channel and he dies. That's very similar to the old throw the witch in the lake, and if she survives, then she's a witch, and if she dies in the lake, well, then she wasn't a witch. Sorry about that. So just I know there is that connection to a witchfinder is not difficult to see, but it's just that choice that he gives is a very specific kind of test of a witch. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That's what made it so terrifyingly good. They had nowhere to go. One of them potentially was for the slice.
Exactly.
Speaking of a slice, I could also do with a slice of pie and a good old beer. So what say you gents, we head on down to the local Queen's Blessing, the inn, for a bit of a tipple.
Yes. Welcome back, fellow quizzers, fellow wheelies. Yes, we are in the Queen's Blessing Tavern. Is it in Camelin? Is it in Tar Valon? Who knows? Unless you read the book, of course. But, yes.
That's not the question.
That isn't the question. No, I shouldn't start the pub quiz with a question that isn't the question.
Yep. So what is the question for this week's pub quiz?
So, question 5. Yes, question 5 for episode 5. What dish is Perrin increasingly sick of eating as he travels with the Tinkers?
Interesting, yeah.
One more time for those in the back.
Yes, what dish is Perrin increasingly sick of eating as he travels with the Tinkers?
I think I'd be sick of this dish after one serving of it. Yes. Answers into feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. There'll be 8 questions, one for each episode of Wheel of Time. The answers have to be into us by the end of the year on the 31st of December, 2021. And we will choose a winner of some Wheel of Time goodies, from the entrants that have come into us, throughout for our in-quiz.
Yes.
But with our tipple done, gentlemen, should we take a bit of feedback?
Yes, Chris, we'll let you go for the feedback. As usual, we record the feedback a little bit later than we record the podcast. So, unfortunately, you won't be here for the feedback on Wheel of Time.
No.
Yes.
Tar Valon for now.
All right. See you in a bit. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. First up, we have an email on our feedback section from Christina of Black Girl Couch Reviews. She says, "Hello, lads. I am sending this ahead of episode 5 just to gush about how much I enjoy your discussions and coverage of the show. I've not read the books, but I find myself immediately immersed in this world of magic. I just have to shout out the casting department and Wayne Yip, the director, for doing an outstanding job on the show so far. It's rare that side characters are as rich as the main cast. I found myself, evil as she turned out to be, truly invested and empathetic towards Dana. Ela, in a short period of time, has had a profound effect, and Aram is delightfully charming, even if he is trying to steal your girl, Rand." Speaking of Rand, he's totally the dragon, right? I'm basing this on nothing other than the fact that the dragon is supposed to shine brighter than the sun, and Rand's a redhead. While Nynaeve is certainly my fave and clearly powerful with the light, methinks it's not as problematic if the dragon were a woman as much as it would be if it was a male, so I'm sticking with my theory. Every time I see Perrin, he warrants a hug. Is it wrong that I'm throwing my panties at every man in this show? Keep up the great work. Can't wait till your next drop, Christina. Thanks, Christina. Is it wrong, John?
Absolutely not, Christina. I am also throwing my own panties at most of the men in this show.
Absolutely.
They're certainly dishy.
Yeah, they certainly are. Good casting.
Yes, absolutely. You've got the Marvel abs. This is the dishy wheel, I guess.
Yeah.
A smorgasbord of fine fellows on the screen to look at. Yes, Aram most certainly is charming for sure. He would definitely talk the belt off me, I guess, something like that, along those lines. Anyway,
hang on a second, you're not supposed to say that with your fiance.
Well, no, that is true. You know what I mean. Though. He's a charmer, and I'm totally with you on Dana. Really got invested in that character, and ultimately she is no more until the next wheel turns and she comes back, but really enjoyed all of that. And I'm certainly kind of with you on your theory on Rand as well. Certainly because of the red hair. That is a good indicator. Good call out, Christina. Yeah. Thanks so much, Christina, for your feedback.
Absolutely. Looking forward to more of Black Girl Couch Reviews as well.
Definitely. We also got some feedback from Coffee and Vodka. "Greetings, homecoming travellers. 1 month later, praise the mother's loving editors. The Citadel is beautiful, and being such an arrogant and politically divided house makes it amazing that it still stands. True. The light of the white coats comes with a heavy hand. Their motivation of eliminating the gods above men while setting themselves up as religious authority makes for a hypocrisy so clear it's amazing they don't see it. Those white coat factions which haven't been visited by the petting zoo, that is, so far no good guys, at least at the organisational level. Might be best if our Fab Four stay away from both. The best character award of the episode goes to the Ent-like literary ogre. More of him, please. Any standouts for you? 4 Klingon funerals out of 5. Take care and peace, Coffee and Vodka." Nice. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. Certainly for me, Charles Valdor is really stand out. I mean, he just oozes awfulness, horridness, nastiness, psychoticness, you name it. And again, for such a small amount of time on screen, he's a fanatic. It's really interesting as well, hearing in this how he says to Egwene, do you really think I keep all of my oaths, when she counters to him that, he wouldn't kill her, because of the oaths of the children of light.
That's right.
So, really interesting here. Direct, who says we keep all the oaths that we make?
Yeah.
Whereas on the Aes Sedai side, the oaths are stuck to, but they're certainly malleable.
Wiggle room.
There is wiggle room for sure. So definitely Child Valdor. I am absolutely loving.
Yeah, really enjoyed his character so far. The main cast I'm really enjoying. They're all kind of equal to me, but I do love Egwene. I think she's so interesting as a character, and Nynaeve being as powerful as she is, and the things she's going through with having discovered that power, I think is really fun to watch on the show as well. But overall, I'm really enjoying the whole cast right now.
Yeah, definitely. Really good cast of people here. And I'm really glad that Perrin's eyes have started to shine bright as well. It adds another dimension to his character. So really good.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Let's head over to Facebook for some feedback. First up, Deanna de Bruyne Maskell says, the visuals and music continue to be gorgeous. Bracketing this episode with 2 funerals was devastating emotionally. From the riderless horse to the beating of chests, so powerful. But oh my, is everything else about the tower just terrible and rotten to the core. Loyal the Ogier was terribly misused here, and I do not know why they even bothered to include him. I continue to love the travelling folk so much, and I want them to run this world. I have never celebrated a wolf pack so much in my life, but I'm not certain the show set it up as much as they could have. It felt like a leap to me, and I read the books. So much ground covered in this episode, I am still trying to catch my breath. Deanna, you heard the podcast, I'm exactly the same as you. I haven't read the books, but I did feel like the introduction of the wolf pack seemed like a significant leap for me to kind of go with and see where it's going. Especially because at the end of the episode, it seems like Perrin and Egwene have left the group. So I guess we're not going to get much more build on that until we possibly meet back up with them sometime in the far future. But it feels like there should have been a bit more setup, especially because we've had a few scenes with them where there were kind of stories being told, but not detail being given about who they are and what this wolf pack means in this universe.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as a book 1 and book 2 person only at this stage, I really agree with you, Deanna, around Loyal. I think he was misused in the sense that it would have been great to have had him and Rand, as I said on, just before, 5 minutes just for them to kind of get that sense of one another as well as the audience. And you can see why, he's there and does what he does ultimately.
And it's weird. I was rewatching the episode today, after we've seen it a couple of times for doing the podcast itself. And all the scenes that you guys had mentioned, they're all there. There's all the moments there in their discussions between. There is him, Rand arriving in the library and being freaked out and taking out his sword, and Loyal explaining that when people see him, instantly they're scared of him. But it's just because there's no time for those scenes to breathe at all that it feels like you could miss it, and you're not getting the proper introduction to the character. It feels almost like they had a tick box of the things that need to be introduced about Loyal the character, and then they moved on. Absolutely.
It just needed a little bit more. And even if it was just coming back to them again before Loyal brings Nynaeve down to the inn. And I think the same around the wolf pack. There is a character here that is more than likely, and I have no idea, but could quite easily be introduced now that Perrin has the shining golden yellow eyes.
Okay, not the shining. Okay.
But he's introduced in book 1 and is your guide to what Perrin is doing, and so gives more detail, is more rounded. And so I really think they kind of missed that. I think there's just a few things that, and again, adapting such a massive book and series of books, these choices have to be made. I'm just questioning those choices from my own perspective, but it doesn't alter how wonderful I'm finding this adaptation and this TV series. So yeah, thanks so much, Deanna, for the feedback. Really good, as always. More Facebook feedback from Angie Arhouse, who says, I am really loving this series. I have not read the books, so I have no judgment associated with its portrayal of them, but I am enjoying it as a fan. I really appreciate the striking visuals, cinematography, and use of colours. It's stunning to look at. I'm also excited to see each character's powers unfold as they reveal themselves to us, the viewer. Well done and bravo. I absolutely second that, Angie, as well. You know, it is just so epic, and the whole thing feels fully realized as a world. And that is one of the tough elements in fantasy to do, because you're creating worlds. It really needs so much shorthand as well as longhand in this, and it's getting that balance right. And just those elements around the costumes, the cultures, how you do a wide shot, the music really builds to and adds to that idea of this world that we have been introduced to. So really good stuff.
Absolutely. And our more than regular shout out to the X-Ray feature on Amazon Prime.
Definitely.
After this week's episode dropped, they put out 4 making of documentaries. They're only about 4 or 5 minutes long, but there's 2 on the costumes, 2 on the music, and they're both fantastic. I suppose the music one and the costumes one are both fantastic. Check them out. You have to go to primevideo.com on a browser, on a web browser, rather than doing it on any of the apps. For some reason, it doesn't seem to work on the apps. I really hope they work out a way to get those out to more people, because I was saying the other day after watching them, they really felt like the level of quality of the production of these behind the scenes pieces feels like the Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson ones that they did for all the Lord of the Rings movies. They're of that level of detail.
Definitely.
Seeing how the costumes are put together, you know, a simple costume like the Red Aes Sedai costume looks really plain on screen sometimes. Well, not in 4K. When you watch it in 4K, you can see the detail, but when they show you what the costume looks like and the influences in it, it's fascinating to see how much detail's in there.
Definitely,
this world.
Definitely. That was mind blowing to me. I really felt that the Red Aes Sedai, Lyanna, the costume was almost like a very plain red tunic, and then the X-ray look at these costumes of the Red Aes Sedai, and indeed Moiraine's shoulders to her own blue outfit, the detail involved in it. Was incredible. So definitely worth a check out. I second that as well. Yes,
and even from the music side, they have Lauren Balfe, who's the composer. They have the instrumentation that's used to create the stunning soundtrack to this show. Really, really interesting. They also have an interview with Tom, the actor who plays Tom, talking with him about how he came up with that excellent song from episode 3. Really, really good stuff. So check it out. Definitely hope that they can put together a package at the end, maybe, and it's like a 2 or 3 hour behind the scenes tour, because there's so much more detail that
would be great,
and so much more I want to watch of that as well.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks so much, Andrew. We have one final piece of feedback, a voicemail from Steve Brown, back from his Thanksgiving holidays.
Over to you, Steve.
Hello, TV Podcast Industries. This is Steve. This is for Wheel of Time. I've really been loving the show. It's so confusing, though, and I love hearing your guys' coverage of it. Sometimes I have to watch the episodes twice just to even catch it all. But it's been really great. I love how you can incorporate some of the stuff from the book in it as well. But you're also explaining different things that I don't even catch up on. And but I'm loving your coverage of it. I love House Podcastica's coverage of it. And I struggle each week with who do I send a voicemail to? Who do I live Steve? And so this week you're getting a voicemail, and they're going to get the live Steve. Maybe next week I'll send you guys a live Steve and send them a voicemail. We'll see. But again, loving what you guys are doing, and can't wait to hear this week's episode. The last ones were great.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, great to hear your thoughts overall on the series so far, because I know you've been away and I've been unable to send in any of your live Steves or voicemails to us for the show. But I'm really glad you're enjoying it. I hope the way that we've set out the podcast, with me not knowing anything about Wheel of Time and basically asking the guys to give me a kind of rundown on things I may be missing, I hope that's helping you as much as it's helping me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. Well, and I'm only very minor knowledgeable, I guess, on that, which is probably quite dangerous for our fellow wheelies to listen to, because I'm I don't have the long sight of all 15 books, but I'm really glad you're enjoying it, Steve. And Absolutely. As always, thank you so much for your voicemail.
Absolutely, yes. And a shout out to Greg, Ben and Wendy over on the Podcastica podcast who are covering this show as well. I've been really enjoying their coverage over there. Greg reached out to us. John sent us a message after he'd been recording the episodes. He was driving back from Thanksgiving and was listening to our first podcast on TV Podcast Industry's Wheel of Time. And he was laughing about the fact that the two of us were struggling so much through that first episode, and you were helping me out, but didn't have all the book knowledge because Greg's a massive fan of the books. But he was really enjoying the coverage. He says it was great fun to hear the bits that we were stuck on that he may know because of his knowledge of the books. So.
As I say, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Luckily, in this case, and for myself, it is directed at a TV show rather than something maybe a bit more critical.
That's it.
But loving this show.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Thanks to everybody that sent us in feedback for this episode of Wheel of Time. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. You can keep emailing us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. You can also join us on Twitter at tvpodindustries, or find us on Instagram. We're also over there for TV Podcast Industries.
Yes, thank you so much for that feedback. I'm sure it was spankingly good. But do you know what else is spankingly good? Supporting this Wheel podcast. Do you know why? Because you can go to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where you can support us for $1 bill or a single coin to help a weary gleeman get his podcast out into the world. But if you don't fancy going to patreon.com, you can also go to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can buy Derek, our illustrious producer and editor, and everything in between, a bit of caffeine to help the wee hours as the morning goes as he edits this podcast. Yes, you can do that by buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. Yeah. Any support is hugely appreciative. Can't support? We completely understand. Why not? Share the podcast, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. Leave us a review on wherever you are listening to this audible digest of the Wheel of Time, and it will mean a lot to us, and it will be hugely grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, we love your support. Thank you so much. Whatever way you do support us, it's really, really good. This week, if I do get a coffee, it's probably going to go on something to sort out this throat of mine. So I'll be back with my real voice by the next episode of the podcast.
Will that be dissolving some Strepsils into the coffee?
I was trying to avoid brand names, John.
Okay,
that's
sorry.
why I didn't say a nice Lemsip or some Beecham's.
Some lozenges.
Yeah, some lozenges or some paracetamol laden drink.
We can also just get you a hot whiskey the Irish way. Yeah. That's the idea. Yeah.
Take some whiskey.
Oh, whiskey and lozenges, aka Strepsils, would be a powerful combo.
Absolutely. They would, if we want him asleep. But we don't want Derek asleep, because we will be back next week with our continued coverage of Hawkeye over on Disney Plus, and more importantly, depending on what you enjoy, the 6th episode of The Wheel of Time, named, of course, none other than The Flame of Tar Valon. Where have we heard that title before? Who knows?
I think Chris said it earlier on the episode.
Yes.
I think I have. And exactly. I am prophetic.
Yes, looking forward to our coverage of the next episode of Wheel of Time. Thanks so much for joining us, Wheelies.
Yes, thank you, Wheelies. Remember, there are no beginnings or endings, but this is the end of the podcast. Keep watching, keep listening, and keep wheeling. Bye.
I like keep wheeling. Bye.
Bye. Nearly a decade plus, I have been pronouncing these words in my head by myself. Never have I heard them uttered aloud by anyone. Mm-hmm. And now, Egwene it is.
Nope.
Egwene. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. It's a perfect example. And Egwene it is.
Nope.
No, what is it?
It's not even that. Okay, third time. Egwene.
And Egwene it is.
Nope.
Oh,
Egwene. Eggwayne.
And Egwene it is going forward then.
There we go.
Excellent stuff.
Yes.